Merry Christmas, everybody. I am so glad that I get to be here to celebrate the most wonderful time of the year with all of you. I mean, what's there not to love about Christmas? It's family, your friends and loved ones, and presents. It's a break from school and a time to rest. It's a season of celebration with parades, decorations, and lights. Christmas movies, they're on repeat. Christmas music on the playlist over and over again, the same songs. Isn't it weird that we do that? I don't know, I do it. Maybe you do too. And we cannot forget about the Christmas trees. And I don't know about you, but I love the joy of the holiday season, or I guess I should say I love it while it lasts. See, there was this one thing that used to bring me so much joy as a kid. My dad would put up this Christmas village. You know what I'm talking about, like the little ceramic houses and figurines, and we would make like this whole neighborhood that was full of Christmas joy. It was snow and all of the things that you think about when you think winter and the Christmas season. What was funny is that we lived in Arizona, so we didn't have any of those things, but it was like a little reminder of the magic of Christmas. But as I got older, and especially once I was living on my own and I'm married and we have to do it ourselves, and then we have kids who can break those things, like we just stopped the tradition. It was something that was really magical to me as a kid, but as I got older and I had to do it myself, it wasn't the same thing. And maybe you can relate to that. In fact, I think we all probably can understand the moment when the most wonderful time of the year becomes, well, a little less wonderful. It's easy to pretend that everything is merry and bright on the outside, but on the inside, we're not always feeling those Christmas feels. I think that's because the holiday season has a way of bringing out several emotions for several reasons. Instead of calling it the most wonderful time of the year, they might as well change the song to the most stressful, most frustrating, and most worry-filled, the most whatever, you fill in the blank. One primary feeling that we're not usually singing about during the holidays, it's fear. But while it doesn't show up in song lyrics, fear definitely shows up in our lives. Sometimes at Christmas and certainly throughout the year. I mean, one scroll through social media, one glance at the news, one dinner with your family fighting shows you that fear is there. And for a lot of us, whether we realize it or not, fear has a way of creeping in at Christmas and making our joy far less joyful. And that can happen for all kinds of reasons. There's fear that comes from the pressure of passing tests at the end of the semester, or seeing family members that we don't always get along with, or meeting your parent or guardian's expectations for a really good holiday. It could be fear of being left out or forgotten by your friends on holiday break, or fear that comes with knowing your family can't afford a lot this season, or fear of returning to school in the new year. Maybe it's a fear that comes from worrying about what others will think of us, or knowing a loved one is sick or missing this Christmas. Or maybe it's a fear that comes from feeling alone or without friends and family this holiday. Look, no matter what your fears may be about, the good news is that the Christmas story gives us an answer, or at least a response for them. At that very first Christmas, thousands of years ago, Jesus showed up in a situation that was filled with fear. And when the kid arrived, well, it was the first step in changing everything about the way that we can respond to our fears. To help us today, let's look back at that first Christmas. There we find a young girl named Mary who was engaged to Joseph and expecting her first child. And then something unexpected happened. And we know that because it was written down by this guy named Luke, who took the time to investigate Jesus's life and tell us what happened. He wrote this 2,000 years ago, but it's helpful for us today. Look at how this story plays out. Gabriel appeared to her and said, "Greetings, favored woman, the Lord is with you." Okay, the her in this passage is Mary. And let's just stop here because it's important to note that Gabriel wasn't just some random dude. He was an angel of the Lord. So this wasn't some random man on the street saying this to Mary. This was a message directly from God. And angels, well, I would imagine that they were pretty intimidating. I mean, people often fell on their faces after seeing angels. We read that throughout the scriptures. Often the angel's first words to people were, "Do not be afraid." If you were Mary, how would you respond in a moment like this? An angel sent by God suddenly appeared out of nowhere, likely giving you the biggest jump scare of your entire life. And not just that, he declared that you're favored and God is with you. Okay, if I was Mary, I would be feeling both terribly afraid and probably terribly excited all at the same time. And that isn't far from what happened. And we read from Luke's story of what took place that Mary responded by being both confused and disturbed. Honestly, it makes sense. She was young and didn't have status or influence or power. It's not like she had a well-known name that came with a whole bunch of credibility behind it. Honestly, it makes sense. I mean, think about this. This is kind of a wild situation. So when this angel appears to tell her that she was favored by God and God was with her, I'm sure it was terrifying. And sensing her fear, Gabriel responded with a line that would change her life forever. In fact, I think it can change our lives too. Take a look. "Don't be afraid, Mary," the angel told her, "for you have found favor with God." In one sentence, Gabriel not only encouraged Mary not to be afraid, he also gave her a reason not to stay afraid. The reason? She found favor with God. It was this favor, this knowing that God was with her and for her, that gave her confidence in what could have been the scariest, most fear-filled months of her life. Here's how the angel Gabriel described it. "You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus. He will be very great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his ancestor David, and he will reign over Israel forever. His kingdom will never end." Okay, you see what I mean about fear? Look, I'm sure it was already a lot just to be engaged to be married, and now she's about to be pregnant, and not just with like any kid, but this kid, the Son of God himself. Mary had to be thinking something like, what in the world is this angel talking about? If this is true, what will people think? What will Joseph think? How am I gonna do all of this? And of course, God knew that Mary would respond this way. That's why Gabriel assured her with this promise. For nothing will be impossible with God. Look, Mary had every reason to be afraid. Her fears were more than legit, but Gabriel's words served as a reminder that God was with her in the midst of those fears. And with God, nothing is impossible. And with God, nothing is impossible for you or for me either. No fear has to keep us from experiencing the good that God has for us. And we know the rest of the story, don't we? I mean, Mary did in fact get pregnant, and she went on to deliver her baby, the kid who came to be the savior of the world. And in spite of Mary's initial fear, God made it all possible. And even in her fear, Mary knew that God was with her. That's what Christmas shows us. At the heart of the Christmas story is the reality that Jesus came to earth to be God with us. Because of that, we no longer have to face any of our fears, whether they're big fears or small fears, alone. Jesus' arrival in the world shows that to Mary, and it can show us the same today. The kid changes how you see your fear. Because of this kid, we have an opportunity to respond to our fears in the same way that Mary did, with confidence and faith in God who makes all things possible. Look, sure, fear will still happen. We're still gonna have reasons to worry and to be stressed and to be afraid, but because of Jesus, we don't have to let those fears take over. Everything changes when we realize God sent the kid to be here with us in every fear we face, because the kid changes how you see your fear. Sometimes the most difficult thing to do when fears arise is to simply remember what is true. Our brains sort of freeze when we face fear, and that can make it easy to forget the truth that we can anchor to no matter what. So, if fear pops up in your life, especially this Christmas season, here's what I want you to do. Remember. Remember what's true about God, that nothing is impossible with God. Remember what's true about Jesus, that the kid came to be with you as you experience your fears. And remember what's true about you, that you're loved and cared for by God who's with you and can help you with your fears. Start simply by remembering that, like Mary, you can walk forward because you aren't walking alone. Remember that the kid changes how you see your fear. You can even write it down on a few sticky notes, or maybe in your journal or in the notes app on your phone. Maybe you want to write down statements like these. I'm loved by God. Jesus showed up for me. I can trust what God is doing. Jesus is with me in my fear. You can look back to these notes as a reminder about what's true about God, Jesus, and yourself as you face any fears that come your way this Christmas season. Christmas is meant to be a time of joy, but maybe the way you make sure that that's true for you is simply by remembering what Jesus did for all of us. He chose to show up in our world. He chose to be with us. He chose to save us. And that changed everything. So this week, I hope you'll remember that the kid changes how you see your fear. And when you go to group, I hope that you'll talk to your group about how to do that this holiday season. Groups are created to be a safe space to share about your fears and encourage one another to remember and walk forward in faith. Maybe your first step in facing fear this Christmas is opening up to your group about whatever those fears are. And when you head to groups, I want you to be thinking about your response to this question. What's one thing you can remember is true about God when you're afraid?